welcome to generic horse-drawn wagon and O scale, drop tongue and hitching. So on my models, these are some of the early attempts, and they're not quite as accurate as I want them to be, but let's take a look at some of the components. We first have this long drawbar, which is called the drop tongue by some. It connects into the front hounds, and there's a name for that joint, and I'm sorry, I have forgotten what it is. As we move forward from the joint, there's this first long component, and this is a two-horse team, and this is called the double leaf. Attached to the double leaf are two single leaves. On the single leaves, you'll see that there are two eyelets that will face forward. Those attach to the tugging strap that goes to the horse's harness. There's a long bar that continues forward, and then this is the part that's not quite accurate, but there is a bar that attaches to the front of the horse's harness and keeps the two animals going in the same direction. So that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to create this drop tongue, double leaf, and single leaf system. So let's see what parts we need. The first thing we need is the drop tongue. This is one that you've seen in part 1 and 2. I have gone and I have added a second thickness of my material because it was so very thin, 1/16 of an inch. I wasn't convinced it would have the durability I wanted, so I doubled that up. And I also went back to the front suspension, and just forward of the reach plate I added another layer. That'll give us a little more room to drill through when we want to put these two components together and put a linchpin in there. So the first thing we need is that drop tongue. The next thing we need is the double leaf. I've already done part of the construction here because it is a bit tedious. I don't have exact measurements on this double leaf, but I figured that center of horse to center of horse, probably about 6 feet when they're side by side. So I have cut my double leaf to 6 feet long. The single leaf needs to go around the horse on either side. Off of these eyelets will go the tug cords that go up to the harness. So I figured, how wide was a horse? I'm just going to make a guess. I made mine 4 feet so that it would fit nicely inside the double leaf. So we need to have two 4-foot long single leaves. One of them I have not attached, and I did that because we're going to review the parts here in a bit. Finally, we need that board that separates the horses at the front, and I just made another 4-foot section. So each of these components is going to have, if it's a single leaf, it's going to have two eyelets. So two eyelets on the front, two eyelets on the left single leaf, two eyelets on the right single leaf, and then what we need is an eyelet joint for each component. So this is two connected eyelets. I'll show you how to make that in a moment. We need one for each of the single leaves, and we need 3 of them for the double leaf. So let's look at how we make the eyelets. I have taken a pin vise and put a section of music wire, just any old stiff wire will do, a section of music wire into my pin vise. I then have some small diameter wire. This is 26 gauge floral wire. It's quite bendable. So what we're going to do first, and this is how we make the eyelets. I take that and I wrap it around the hook that I've created. I hold the two ends in my needle nose plier, and then I simply wind. The nice thing about this floral wire, it's going to cinch right down to the diameter of that music wire. So make your music wire hook the size you want your eyelets, and then just keep spinning and the metal will fatigue and it'll just pop right off. Oh, that one only popped on one side, but that's okay. I'll get out my nippers and I'll cut it again. So now I have two of the eyelets that we'll need for this single leaf. We now need to have one of these eyelet to eyelet combinations. We're going to do the same thing. Get that fine malleable wire. We're going to go ahead and create another eyelet. Put that together, give it a spin, spin it on down till the metal fatigues and it snaps off. There we go, nice snap off. Now we're going to do the eyelet to eyelet connection. So here's what I have. I now have that half loop piece of wire. What I want to do now is I want to loop one of my previously made eyelets over one side of this loop. So put that in. Shake it to the bottom. And reattach this whole construct onto my pin vise hook. Grab the two ends again. Hold it upwards a little bit. That'll let that previous eyelet slide down out of the way, and wind until it fatigues again. And now I have an eyelet to eyelet flexible connection. So let's go ahead and begin the construction. I first want to go ahead and put my eyelets onto my single leaf. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the eye of the eyelet in my fine nose pliers. I've pre-drilled 3 holes, all on the same side of the single leaf, 1 in the middle and 2 just in from each side. So now what I'm going to do is put some adhesive on the end of my eyelet, and I'm going to press the eyelet in to the single leaf. I have a little extra there. I'm just going to kind of soak that off. There we go. So there's one of the eyelets. Let's go ahead and get the other eyelet ready. Put the other eyelet in my pliers. Put my cyano acrylic on the end of the wire. Press the loop in. And we have it. I like to keep the width of the eyelet equal to the parallel to the long axis of the single leaf, at least on these. Now, let's go ahead and place the swinging double eyelet. I'm going to go ahead and put it again into my fine needle tweezers or pliers. Put some adhesive on the tip. And now this eyelet needs to come in from the opposite side. So this will go in the middle hole. And I'm going to hold that downward just to let my free eyelet kind of swing and make sure that it doesn't get secured by adhesive. So there we go. We've got the single leaf ready to go. I'm going to give that one a second to dry. Here we have the other single leaves that we've made, and you can see that there's a little bit of extra wire sticking out. I'm going to trim that so there's just a small nub to represent the bolt on these, leaving just a little material. With that trimmed, we're ready to go. I'm going to come back to the double leaf now, and you can see that I have a hole drilled in my double leaf, and it occurs to me that I've got it drilled on the wrong axis, so I'm going to go ahead and just drill that hole again. Bear with me one moment. Let's just go ahead and drill that hole. Here's where I like styrene. Styrene is so much more forgiving. With basswood, you get out here and you're near the end grain. It's real easy to split these components, and after you've put in 4 or 5 eyelets, you don't want to split that last one, that's for sure. So I have my hole. Let's go ahead and get adhesive on the double eyelet for the single leaf. Maybe easier to do this with just my shaky fingers. Let's go ahead and get some adhesive on that. And I want this to come in from the opposite direction of the center eyelet. The center eyelet is going to go to our drop tongue, but I want it to come in from the opposite side. Press that eyelet through. Good. Let's give that a minute to cure and come back to this one. We're going to make this the front element of the hitch. And if we take our wagon front suspension, press the joint together, and bring out our horse. I want to bring the horse element, the rear element of this, forward enough that the horse's feet don't get tripped up in all of this. So I'm going to lay that down there, stretch it all out. I'm going to suggest that this horse might need a couple of feet to be a couple feet forward of these elements so that they don't get their heels tripped up on it. Really struggling here today. So let's do it on this side. Bring this element back to the place we want it on the drawbar. Swing the single leaf around to make sure we have space. Bring the horse 2 feet forward. And now from that, I'm looking at this particular horse model, and his chest is out at about 7 feet forward of the single leaf, 5 feet forward of his rear. I'm going to give it another foot. I'm going to come out to, say, 8 feet. And that's where I'm going to put this front single leaf that holds the horses together. So go ahead and drill my hole there. Go ahead and grab my front single leaf, put adhesive on my eyelet construction. This one I want to put in from the top. This will have the drop tongue dangle from the horse's necks, keeping it up off the ground in front of them. There we go. We're going to go ahead and let that dry. I know that I want to put the double leaf just forward of where I've doubled up my drop tongue. But before I do that, I want to trim all of these to length, get the scrap off. So again, leave just enough to suggest a nut and bolt. Okay, this one is going to come in from the bottom. So I'll go ahead and drill my hole. Turn it so that the bottom is up. Get the double eyelet portion of the center double eyelet on the double leaf in my hand. Put on the adhesive and push that up from the bottom. So there we go. There is my harness and drop tongue for the wagon. I'm going to give this a little bit to dry. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and drill the linchpin hole here in this reach mechanism. Join me in just a couple minutes. And single leaf. Springs out of the way. Make sure that my components are aligned vertically. And now it's time to drill a hole all the way through. I'm really glad I made this double width. This 1/16 of an inch thick basswood would not have stood up for this. I'm going to have to do this on my lap. Bear with me. Okay, well, I've drilled through. It's not exactly square, and there was the slightest little bit of breakout. Turns out that the paint made the hardness of the wood different than the bare wood, and that really kind of directed things in a funny direction. So now that I have that, I want to go ahead and get another piece of brass wire. I want to press that in to this existing hole. So there's my kingpin. I'm going to go ahead and make a 90-degree angle on one side. Pull that tight. Bend the other side down to 90 degrees. Later, I'll bend it to 90. I'll trim it off. For now, because we're still in the paint booth, I'm going to leave this free to be pulled out. And there we go. There's my harness. We've got a little bit of excess on the front end, forward of the horse. We don't want that to nosedive into the ground on him, so let's go ahead and trim that short. And there we go. We now have a 2-horse harness for our generic horse-drawn wagon and O-scale. Join me next time when we begin to work on the cargo bed for our wagon.